Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be going over the topics of preparation for the NAPLEX and the MPJE, which are obviously two of the biggest exams you're going to be taking prior to your licensure as a pharmacist. They're ultimately what you've been preparing for over all of your years in your PharmD curriculum. So these are kind of scary topics, but with everything you've been learning over the past several years, you're going to breeze right through these and you're going to nail both of these exams. So first topic we're going to cover is NAPLEX preparation. So there's a variety of um, preparation options here. RX Prep, which is by the UWorld system, is going to be one of the most common resources. That's a really big one for both pharmacy licensure along with a lot of our medical counterparts. So MDs, DOs are utilizing the same system for a lot of their preparation for their exams. TrueLearn, which is an online system, has a lot of great practice exams, and we'll touch base on them in just a little bit here. And then pharmacyexam.com is another very good option for practice exams, and we'll go over a little bit of their information in just a little bit here. So looking at RX Prep, this is going to be, like I said, the most widely used preparation tool really in the country, and is really broken into two parts. So you have an online course, so an online question bank primarily, along with a course book. The one downside with this resource, with even looking at how great it is very costly of a system. So you're talking about $1,200 for the course book plus the online portion, or around $1,000 for just the online portion. A lot of schools do provide this for free to their students, so that is definitely a great tool. But if you are paying for this on your own, it can be a little bit more of a financial burden. Looking at the course book here, that's going to be roughly about 1,000 pages thick, and it's going to be broken into about 80 or so individual topics. So those topics are going to range anywhere from diabetes and different endocrinology based topics to calculations to special populations like pediatric patients and geriatrics and basically everything in between. So it's a very, very thorough book, and it is going to cover basically every module that you've had in school is going to be included in this book in great detail. Along with that physical book, the online portion consists of roughly about 2,000 or so practice-based practice-based questions, and those are going to be based on previous NAPLEX exams. So what they do is they utilize the questions from several years ago's NAPLEXs that are now public knowledge, and those questions are put into the system as usually about case-based questions or questions that are testing your knowledge of the concept. So it's not necessarily looking at, can you just regurgitate this information that's on the pages of the book? It's looking at, can you take this information and apply it to a real world patient that's going to obviously not just be your textbook absolutely perfect patient. They're going to have other issues that make the treatment a little bit more difficult. And with these questions, you can take these by topic. So if you want to focus on all diabetes questions, you could definitely do that. Or you can mix them up and they're going to simulate a real world exam. So, doing a question with calculations, then moving on to a heart failure question, then moving on to a special populations, and so on and so forth. And the nice thing is, if you do miss a question through this system, you will get a long explanation of why your answer was incorrect and why the answer that they had was correct. And it will help you to truly understand why you missed it and not just remembering what the correct answer is for the next time that you took it. And this is the system I utilize for most of my NAPLEX preparation, was the RX Prep, just due to how thorough of a system it was. And my university luckily provided this completely free of charge for us. So it was obviously a huge cost savings for me. Next, looking at TrueLearn. So this is going to be an online system that's going to be primarily for practice questions. They have roughly about 1,600 or so practice questions on their system. Cost of this is around $200, and this is for a 1-year subscription. And again, this one's also written based on previous NAPLEX exams. So looking at um, a lot of the case-based questions again and how those can be utilized for your patients that you're trying to treat. And they do have a guaranteed pass on here. So if you do not pass on the first time you take it, they will extend out um, your subscription with them for free. So really, once you pay that initial fee, there's not going to be necessarily that continued added cost on. Also with this, TrueLearn, at least in 2024, I can't speak for future, they did utilize a free week where they were allowing students to take roughly, it was about 100 question or so practice NAPLEX. That was completely free of charge, and it lets you see how you did compared to other students in the country, which I did do, and it was a huge benefit in knowing that while I was missing questions, obviously, whenever I was taking it, I was in the national average, which gave me a lot more confidence knowing that if the vast majority of people are passing this, I'm in a great shape too. Looking at our third topic here is going to be pharmacyexam.com. So this does offer a wide variety of services, and there are different price points based on the services. So they do have a practice question bank with over 5,000 practice questions. So one of the largest question banks of any resource that you can find. They do have physical and audio books with NAPLEX review topics. One thing that I really do like about this resource is that audiobook component of it. I'm someone that doesn't like to sit down and read a 1,000-page book. So I can listen to it for a half an hour on my way to work or be sitting there listening to it, and I don't have to necessarily be focused on absorbing the information through reading. I can be listening to it, and for me, that's a better way for me to learn. Also with that, they have flashcards, which can be obviously utilized either in a paper format if you're someone that likes the physical flashcards, or these flashcards are also available on mobile devices. So what I was able to do is take some of these flashcards on my lunch break at work. I was looking over them, I would get through 50 or so flashcards on my lunch break, and it made me feel like I was getting something done in a time that I otherwise wouldn't have been preparing. So definitely a great way to maybe break up your studying a little bit and utilize different ways of studying rather than just looking at your prep book and reading it all day long. You want to make sure you're breaking it up, because ultimately, if you're sitting there reading the same topic for hours on end, you're not going to absorb as much of that information. Now we're going to look at some MPJE prep. And I want to preface this by saying every state is going to be different on their MPJE. Ohio is different than Pennsylvania. That's different from Missouri. That's different from any other state. And especially California. California does have the CPJE, so that's going to be a completely different ballgame. And if you are located in California, I would highly recommend that you utilize resources that your school is providing, and also looking at CPJE study guides, because it's going to be a lot different than just your standard MPJE. There are going to be a variety of topics that we're going to look at, a little bit more of a variety of topics, but not quite as much information, just because, like I said, every state is a little bit different. And I am licensed in Pennsylvania, so a lot of the examples I'm going to use are based on Pennsylvania, but every state is going to have little nuances, so definitely do some research. Your school's material is a great place to start off. So if you have a mandatory law class that you have to take at your school, this is a great place to set your knowledge base. By no means am I telling you that they're going to cover everything you need to know, because it's ultimately going to be almost impossible to do that in a 15-hour or so lecture throughout the course of an entire semester. But it's going to give you that baseline of knowledge. In my case, my school provided a free MPJE prep through UWorld. If they do provide that, I would 100% recommend utilizing it. It's going to be very, very detailed. But also with that, I would not utilize that as your only prep. For example, the UWorld system is great for federal law prep, but does not focus basically at all on the state system. So if you would just utilize that, you would be missing a large portion of your preparation. Looking at pharmacyexam.com, this is not one that I personally utilized, but I've heard a lot of very good things. So this does have exams written for pretty much every state. They are written by licensed pharmacists in that state. So the nice thing is these are individuals that are out there in the practice field and are seeing these laws in effect. So the big thing is you don't want necessarily, someone that's not in the practice of pharmacy teaching you this, because there's a lot of information that could get left out if they're not used to this. All of their courses have roughly 200 practice questions in addition to their written material. So a lot of really good case-based questions and practice things. And our cost on this is relatively low, about $100 to $150 per state, so not a huge financial commitment by any means. Now, looking at Dr. C's MPJE, this is what I personally utilized in Pennsylvania for my preparation. It's a great resource. The only downside of this is it's only offered for Pennsylvania, Texas, and Florida, along with a federal option. My general rule of thumb is if something's just a federal option, I personally don't see the advantage in paying for that kind of service, just because you're ultimately going to have to buy a state book anyways. That's going to cover a lot of that federal material anyways. So just utilizing your financial resources in a responsible manner. This one also, again, not a super huge financial commitment. It's $100, $99.99 on Amazon, free shipping. 100 practice questions. And the nice thing with this is if you are located in one of those states, they do send out updates every time a law changes. So I've gotten multiple updates on Pennsylvania laws once they've changed, which is nice, kind of as a little refresher, because sometimes those can kind of slip under the rug. And then looking now at apps, which is something you generally wouldn't think of for RX prep. A lot of states do have apps designed by members of their board of pharmacy. So Pennsylvania, for example, has an MPJE app. It was $19.99, which I bought. And it had, I believe it was right about 200 practice questions. And they're all case-based questions, explain the answers to you. Now, every state is not necessarily going to have this exact same resource, but if your state does have it for $10 or $20, it's a great financial investment, and something that you can be utilizing anywhere you go. And then other universities. This is also a topic that you wouldn't think much about, but if your school is offering a law review, the other College of Pharmacy a half an hour down the road is probably also offering a law review. So my suggestion would be, as comfortable as it may seem, as uncomfortable as it may seem, best thing is to reach out to that university and see if you can just sit in on their law review. The worst they can say to you is no. If they say yes, you just gained a whole nother perspective on laws from someone else that you're not used to hearing from, that may explain a topic better on your personal level that you may not have understood in the initial way it was presented to you. So in my case, for example, like I went to school at University of Findlay in Northwestern Ohio. Our law professor was actually from the Lake Erie College of Medicine up in Erie, Pennsylvania, which is like 2 hours or so from my house. So I reached out to her, was talking to her, and she offered that I could come up to the law review session that she was hosting up at her school, just as to gain another perspective and to go over some of the laws, just as a refresher course, which I thought was a very, very great opportunity, and it provided insight that I would not have gotten by just studying on my own. Okay, so now we're going to look at pacing yourself, which is a slide that I intentionally left blank because there is no rock solid answer on exactly how this should happen. In the personal way I studied was I sat down and I was reading the RX prep books, and I was studying like 12 to 14 hours a day. So very, very long days. which I fully understand isn't going to work for everyone. And by no means is this like a one size fits all system. So the big thing I would emphasize for student pharmacists or someone that's just starting off is start studying early. You can never start studying too early, whether that's 10 minutes a day that you're looking at a topic, or if on your weekends you're going to say, hey, I'm going to, as soon as I get up in the morning, I'm going to study till lunch, and then I'm going to take the rest of the day for myself. If you start studying early, you will be thanking yourself later. There is a lot of topics to cover. Like I said, the RX prep book is 1,000 pages. If you plan on studying a week or two before the exam, you're going to put a lot of added stress on yourself. So I always say, even a little bit of preparedness at the beginning is going to set yourself up really, really well for the end. And also, too, you want to make sure you're treating yourself well while doing this. In my case, I was able to sit down for 10, 14 hours a day and study. For a lot of people, that's not going to work, and you're going to just mentally drain yourself doing this. So my suggestion would be, say to yourself, okay, I want to study for 2 hours. And then I'm going to take a half an hour break, and I'm going to go outside and I'm going to do something, and then I'm going to come back. I wouldn't say I want to get through 100 pages of my book and then I'm going to take a break. Because what's ultimately going to happen is, if you give yourself a page limit that you want to get to, you're going to rush to get to that end point. If you give yourself a time limit instead, you're going to get as far as you get in that time period, then you're going to take your break, and then you're going to come back to it. So you're not necessarily rushing through it. It's just a kind of a different way of thinking about it. And like I said, it's not a one size fits all, and we all need to realize where our strengths are. So if you're not a strong reader, maybe an audio option's better for you, or maybe drawing out charts or something is going to be the better way to study for you. So everything's going to be individualized. Maybe you want to study in groups. Maybe you're better studying yourself. The whole point of this is you need to do whatever's best for you in the situation. And whether that's still working while you're studying or taking some time away from work or whatever, your job is going to understand, because ultimately you're going to be bettering yourself throughout this entire process. And they ultimately want to see what's best for you. Especially if you're in a retail chain or something like that, and you're an intern, they want to get you up to that next step as a pharmacist, because they already know you're a great character and they know that you have a great work ethic. So they want to keep someone like you in their company. So that's going to wrap up our topic for today. Next week's topic is going to look at the first 6 months after graduation. So touching a little bit still on this NAPLEX prep, but also setting yourself up well for your first job that you're going to be getting, both on a financial basis, and making sure that you do have the right tools that you need to succeed in that role. So we will see everyone later.